A legendary hero, in other words, an absolute ruler, said to have dominated during a certain era. There were those who were able to frighten others with just their name. There was a king who established an empire and the head of a large organization. From time memorial, there were those whose tales were sung for ages, those who defeated the demon king, those who cured disease and saved countless people. And then there were those who did not fit in and only pursued absolute strength, as we see a guy saying pathetic, they can just go fuck themselves. Getting angry, he says to train a 10-year-old boy however they want, to be greeted with a fist if things aren't to their liking. If I were to, somehow, survive their trials as we see a girl, smiling and saying, "What's this?" I would just be thrown into a pit of fire layer. They would then spout crap like it's for your own good. These scars that have slowly accumulated within my soul, along with this place hall of heroes, I will say goodbye to them soon, as we learn our MC name is Davy. As the hero says, but he's still so weak, the blue-haired girl saying I should have kept him in the pit of fire for longer. Davy replies, "How long are you planning on having me call you Nuna?" Grandmas who have lived for thousands of years as she gets angry, and shouts, "What did you say?" As he closes his year, they shout this bastard must have a death wish. "You little brat, I'm just gonna unhand me, seriously Daphne, shut up all of you guys," as she gets frustrated, and Davy looks back to her. They all get sad seeing him leave, and says whatever, "Goodbye, Davy. Don't forget us, for as long as you live," as Davy looks at them. He starts to leave, and everyone seeing him cries and waves goodbye. He gives a little smile, and says, "Let us never see each other again." As he passes through the portal, we see him lying with a pipe attached to his hand, and he is laying on bed all sick. He says, "Damn it, my body is totally stiff. I can't even open my eyes properly," as he gives up trying to get up. He says, "I've returned." He looks at the painting saying, as the abandoned weak prince, Davy Al Roan. The Roan kingdom is located on the eastern side of the Tianis continent, the first son of the worthless king of an insignificant country. That is me, Davy Al Roan. I felt happy when I was reborn into this body. I am a prince even though I may be bedridden. Compared to my previous life, I can live in luxury. Okay, I take back what I said about luxury. Why was I so foolish back then? I used to think the happiness I had would last forever, and because I lived in a peaceful world, I did not realize the situation I was in as a prince. We see her mom being killed due to poison, and that he would be a target for enemies all the time. That if you're weak, you can be exiled from the family. Let's end it at that. What I need to do now is to recover my body. Everything else can be dealt with later. Everyone just wait, as he smirks, saying, "I will face you all with this body that has been trained by heroes for 1,000 years. We see a little Davy crying, and someone comes over and says, "So this is where you were, newbie." He asks Davy why so serious, and that he heard about his situation. Seems like they gave you a pretty good beating this time. That sight was quite spectacle. Davy replies that if he's gonna make fun of him, he might as well just do it. He didn't said anything wrong. Forgetting about the times we've spent laughing and smiling, just to be disappointed when they find out I'm just worthless brat. They looked at me as if I were an insect. I felt uncomfortable, but I was too scared to say anything. You don't even know how fed up I am. I didn't come here because I wanted to. What am I supposed to do? He replies that they were shocked by the truth since they live off their pride. Surely you already knew deep down, HMPH. What is a hero anyways, Davy says. Isn't that what we've been thinking about every day and night, the guy adds, and tells Davy to cheer up as he picks him up. Davy says what? In shock, and he replies that he decked to land him a hand. To begin with, there is no reason for me to laugh at you, since it is not your fault. I will handle it since we are family now. Davy asks, what do you mean family? I don't even know who you are. He says his name is Hercules. In other words, he is a survival expert. Survival, what Davy replies. He says from now on I will train that body of yours. He just picks him and goes saying, since it's like this, let's try to get along, and Davy asks what about his thoughts as he ignores him. Back to the present, he says that's right, I have really returned. We see Davy's home, and his door opens and someone comes in. He says, how long has it been since I woke up? The one who has been taking care of me all this time. The only person who came into this room, just one maid. Of course it would be like this, since I've been in coma for a long time. He gets angry at the fact that there is only one maid, but says, that's right, I should think of it as a blessing, that at least one person takes care of me. He opens one eye to look if someone is there, and gets up saying, I don't have the power to move freely, but I can at least stand on my own. This should be good enough for now. He continues that other than that he has some things he needs to check. I will finally find out what the date is. The date is 278 Baldies, he says from the time he was struck by that arrow, 6 years. We see a scene from his past when he was struck by that arrow. He says 6 years has passed with an angry face. He says, I can't go back to being pathetic. In order to prevent that, I need to recover quickly. Now then shall we get started. He clenches his fist and says restore heal and sees it not working, which surprises him, as he says this isn't right, aren't you supposed to help me in my need? He raises his hands in the air and we hear, as you can see, your holy power is quite average, Davy. Well, I am not saying that it's bad or anything. You can still become the best in terms of wielding the power. As Davy replies that no way are you just saying that in order to get me to clean temple, she replies you little shit. Holy power, the power of the God who rules over purity and health, a sacred power only given to those who are loved by the gods. The one who taught me about holy powers, Daphne, was known to people as the girl who was accepted by God, though how she used those powers was her responsibility. In the end, it was due to her working hard for hundreds of years that she was able to acquire the holy power. He says, stop being so annoying. The problem is that this body has become still over the last 6 years. I was worried about losing all the experience I gained by returning to this body, but it seems like most of it arrived safely along with my soul. However, just like when I tried to stand up with this body, it's probably going to take some time for me to be able to use my true strength. He says Pele's just move a little and uses restore heal again, and says even more for the most basic healing ability to work. He repeatedly uses the move restore heal and says move to no avail. Tired, he sighs and says normally he just would give up, but he says with anger, hey, get a move on before I kill you. And finally, it works as we see 2 wings behind him. He laughs and says nice, I can't miss this opportunity, and uses restore to heal himself. He says I did it. I finally did it with this. I have acquired essentially the holy power as we see him standing up. As for the rest of my skills, I can get them after I have recovered. He stands on the window and feels the breeze with a content and relaxed face. He looks out the window and says it's been a while with a happy face, as he suddenly lifts both his hands in the air and says with all my might and shouts, I praise the sun. He laughs and we see his maid standing behind her. He suddenly realizes that, and the maid is shocked to see the prince like that, and asks, how are you? He cringes hard inside his mind and says I'd rather be dead right now, and his maid runs towards him. We see the doctor checking him, and he says you're quite strange one, the condition of your body is surprisingly well. He says is there perhaps an injury I didn't notice? He replies that other than being a bit tired, there isn't much else. Doctor replies, I see. And inside his mind, Davy says if it was the past I wouldn't have imagined being this rude to an elder. Even though I don't like it, I understand my current position. Davy Alrone. I am a roan, the name given to the royalty of the most insignificant kingdom among all the kingdoms, as well as the son of Lenny Alishard and the current first prince of the nation. How tenacious a lady comes to Davy and says, Davy looks at her and says that fancy person is the person who poisoned my mother to take her place the current queen, Linus Bariat. Even her children are here, second Prince Carlos and third Prince Benitez. Carlos says I know right I didn't know he could be that tenacious. Linus says right did you see who shot the arrow, and Davy replies that he is not sure the arrow came out of nowhere. He says have they been captured as he looks at Carlos, he says an attempt to assassinate a prince. I wonder what kind of punishment we will give them as Carlos looks terrified. Linus replies no, regrettably the case has been closed. As Davy looks at her, she says we are done here. The doctor says the initial treatment is over, so all you need to do now is to call the priest for medical care every now and then, and you'll be better within a few days. Davy thanks him. He says anyways I will leave you to it, as doctor tells the maid to give him meals that are easy on the stomach, and Linus tells Davy it would have been better if he died in his sleep. Davy replies that is she disappointed because an eyesore is back in her life. Carlos says the so-called first prince gets attacked and goes into coma. What an embarrassment. As Davy looks at them and they leave, Davy says kingdom's embarrassment don't make me laugh. Davy looks at his hand and says I've been using holy magic in front of them, but it seems no one has noticed. It must be due to the fact our power levels are so far apart. He says Yahoo and falls on bed and says Linus Bariat, the daughter of the fallen family in Roan Kingdom. When I saw their faces, I wanted to kill them, but man, that was nothing. Maybe it's because I was at the temple for so long, but it feels pretty meaningless. Even so, I am going to have my revenge. Let's just take it easy for now and recover. Well, I wonder what my first meal will be. We see Davy cut his hair, and he starts exercising, saying it's been fortnight since I've awakened my holy powers. We see him exercising some more as he sweats hard, and says time passed by quite leisurely. Thanks to moving training my mana control, my recovery process is going smoothly. Though I'm unable to recover great amount with continuous use of healing magic, with the knowledge of a necromancer who has studied human body, and the medical knowledge taught to me by Sister Haya, it is not a hard task for me to recover. He snaps his finger and gets all clean using water magic. As he says, magic is so convenient, and we see Amy gets here, and Davy says, however, she is here. She serves him food as Davy looks disappointed, and says the food I was looking forward to is just because I'm a patient, they treat me like an elderly, as he tells her that today is also filled with displeasure, and she asks for his forgiveness. She says she can't do anything about it. Davy replies that, well, even this will suffice, so get 5 more plates ready. Amy, shocked, asks 5 plates. Davy says, oh, sorry, I mean 10 plates, again, which shocks Amy, and he replies that it's fine, he will just shove it all in. Even though it feels like my stomach is about to burst, because of the magic, restore the amount I can digest has tripled. He looks comfortable as he says, it feels like my soul is returning to my body. And of course, as he grabs his stomach, says, damn it, I need to go to the washroom. The problem is I digest everything too fast. Davy starts reading something saying that this is something he truly didn't expected, and that he ended up unearthing an unexpected truth. He sighs, and Amy says, I'm very sorry, Prince, and he replies that it's all right, you didn't do anything wrong. to have to worry about the amount of food I would consume, though it's quite obvious where the issue stems from, as he asks Amy how many maids and butlers are there in the castle. She hesitates and Davy asks, "Are you telling me it's just you?" She again says, "I've done an unspeakable thing, I'm very sorry," as Davy sighs. Davy says this may not be the king's castle, but it has been used by many other kings in the past. "So you're telling me you've been managing castle all by yourself?" However, only one maid has been holding the fort. It's quite the sight to return to. Back in the day, I would have never worried about not being able to eat. He asks Amy what's the estimated amount of assets in the castle. She replies that just 6,000 gold. Davy says to think my income would only be 10 gold. He asks how much did we earn this month. If we're able to work around that budget, we shouldn't have a problem. He thinks that, well, officially, we should be getting 500 gold a month. The gold we actually get is less than 100. He asks her, are we being extorted, and asks her, what about your salary, and she says, pardon, in confusion. She again hesitates, and he says, don't make him ask twice. Are you receiving it properly? She hesitatingly says the amount she receive is about 1/3, which shocks Davy. He thinks she might be nice, but she is an idiot. Maids are the property of the nobility, and Amy is the daughter of an artist. Due to her poor conditions, she became my maid, but to take of me and the castle without running away. For the past 6 years by herself, even though it meant spending her own salary to do so, as Davy smiles. He tells her to take what she didn't receive from his income. She, confused, says, pardon. He says, I thought I told you to not make me repeat myself. Amy replies, I'm sorry, but, and Davy says you say, we don't even have anything to eat tomorrow. Amy replies, that is correct, Prince. He says, a prince. You can stop calling me that, it's a bit too formal. Davy smiles and says he feels great. And Amy says, even so, but Davy stops her and says, if you keep calling me Prince, it makes me feel quite detached from you. Amy blushes and Davy says to know that there is at least one person who is on my side here. They both arrive at Castle Financial Management, and Davy says to think the prince has to do his own finances. If my ancestors saw this, they'd probably flip out. Davy says even in this situation, my father hasn't shown up, and says, did I make a mistake by asking that? Davy says, I'm sure if the Queen heard it, it would have been a big mess. As Amy gets nervous, and Davy says, sorry, Amy, even so I have no thought of backing down. He tells Amy if she keeps dilly-dallying, he is going to leave her and go, and thinks that my father didn't do anything when my mother was killed. And I wouldn't even consider him my father anymore. Amy tells Davy she will guide him, as Davy tells Amy that he looks forward to be working with her, and she says yes. We see the head of the financial department saying to use funds that are already accounted for is impossible. Davy says that Mustache really pisses him off, and says so this is the financial department. I had my suspicions, but they are really looking down on me, as the head smirks. Davy sits down and says, hey, are you fucking with me, in an intimidating tone. Scared, he says, pardon. Davy replies it's stated that the amount of gold we should be receiving is 500, but why is it that we're not even getting 100 gold? The head replies that's the amount of gold left after deducting the costs required to maintain the castle. Even the nobles of other castles are following your economical. Davy cuts him off and says, you're pissing me off. Is that why the castle you are maintaining has cracked floors and weed growing out of it? The garden is full of weeds, and the hills are about to collapse. No matter how you look at it, this is haunted house. And says, how are you going to explain this? He gets all silent, and Davy says that's right, this doesn't make sense, does it? Inside his mind, the head thinks what kind of prince looks over his finances. Davy says, I'm looking forward to see what kind of excuse you will present to me. He replies the use of word maintenance fund is not supervised by the financial department. Even if you keep acting like this is a place where we manage the budget, not a place where you request money. Davy sarcastically says, I didn't know that. Inside his head, he says whether it's here or on Earth, they all just pass the blame. Davy says, I'm done, let's get going, Amy, and the head asks, are you going to the maintenance department? Davy replies, why would he go there, and says, I'm pretty sure it'll be the same there as well. I'll bet you'll just blame someone else to buy time. Just go buy something with that money in your pocket, Davy says. This place is so in order, and of course my servants would run away when the nobles are like that, despite that they make sure they get paid in full. And all burden is carried by Amy alone. He says, Amy, can you bring me a sword? Don't worry about it. I don't plan on cutting anyone. He laughs and asks, did I scare you? And Amy says, I'll go look for one. He says, that is right. I don't plan on cutting a person. I plan on cutting those things that can be barely called human. We see Davy attacking and killing something, and says, since I'm in a shaky position, what will happen if I start mowing down servants and nobles without a reason? The answer is simple. The prince gone insane. We must exile the prince immediately. They won't stand for it. And he says he absolutely have no intention of becoming a prey to the rotten nobles. We see he killed an animal, as Amy asks, when did you? Davy replies, not sure, it just happened to be in front of the castle. He tells Amy, do you mind brining a plate and the waterproofing agent? That was a lie in his mind, and that he caught it himself, but it wouldn't make sense, so he is saying this. Amy says, Sir Davy, please just kill me instead. He asks, what are you doing in confusion? She gets all teary and says, I can't let the animal blood touch the hands of a prince. He replies, touch me, but it's already all over me, and Amy says, and to say that you are going to butcher it yourself. If you're not careful, you'll hurt yourself again. He says it's all right since no one is looking, and says even if I wanted to see the king, I would get denied due to political affairs. As for the other departments, there's nothing I can do. It seems like Queen Linus is doing everything in her power to stop me, but as a student of Hercules, the master of survival, I've become somewhat specialist. This is a bore. However, it is now dinner to Amy, and says this level of danger is nothing to me inside his mind. It gets night, and the Linus says, what could he possibly thinking of? The maid asks, do you mean Prince Davy? She replies, that's right, more, I think the stranger it seems. He isn't how I remember him to be. And the maid says, even so, he is just a patient. According to the priests, the first prince is barely able to walk right now. At this rate, it will take at least a year for him to fully recover. Is there any reason your informant could be wrong? Linus asks Shirley. Linus says, even though you might be a class of informant for the Dark Moon, you are nothing but a C-class made in my presence. She thinks it's not that I don't trust her, but I just can't shake off the uneasy feeling she gives me. The first prince whom even the king has abandoned, just like Shirley, said nothing will change even if he woke up after 6 years. I will still have his life in palms of my hands. It is supposed to be that way. Shirley replies, my comrades act regardless of class, if you are to continue insulting them. Linus says, oh, I was just voicing my concerns. I can stop what Davy has planned, but if it's not like that, you will end up paying the price. Keep that in mind, and says this isn't very good, you may go now. Linus says no matter how I look at it, it's best to get rid of dogs who doesn't listen to you. As Shirley leaves, she says please command me when the time comes. And we see Davy and Amy enjoying the hunt they caught and cooked. It's just like pulling a thread through hundreds of needles. The mana pierces the tunnel and creates a stream, very slowly and carefully. Do you understand, my youngest? The hardest parts to reach are the veins and the brain. If you don't want to go blind, never forget the pathways that I have taught you. HMPH, we see someone laugh. That's quite entertaining. He should have just died. A drunk priestess who could split the ocean with her harsh word. A necromancer who acts more like a priestess than the priestess herself, Roeas. A grand mage whose staff is all I could see, and there shouldn't be any major problems. As long as I'm participating in this experiment, I will do my best to complete the task assigned to me. The goddess sister Hippocrea sister he. Davy says it's not like everyone gathered here just to watch me, so you'll help me right. They say, well, that's true, but you should trust us. This is a flashback from the temple, Davy says. It's slowly getting to the point when I start doing that. The experiment that I never want to go through again. Back to the present, we see Amy asking Davy, are you exploring the gardens today? And he replies that welcome back, Amy. He says the weather is nice today. Even the forest-like garden looks elegant now. He says to Amy, I'm okay, you can leave. If anyone is looking for me, let me know. Amy replies that don't push yourself too hard. Davy thinks although she would normally flip out at the sight of me doing anything, she's starting to adapt. Are my efforts of getting closer to Amy finally bearing fruit? She refused to eat with me, but at least it's better than before. To spend my days peacefully, as he says, shall we get started, and sits down. He uses something called Operation Field, which creates a huge barrier around him. As the air is entering my lungs and nurturing me, I take mana from nature and exhale the stale air. This is mana breathing, the breathing technique of the god of magicians, the little Brad Odin. Since there is limit to how much mana your body can store, you need to train and manage on a daily basis. However, through this method, mana that would normally take months to gather can gathered in a mere few days. It's a miraculous breathing technique. If the country were to learn this, it would bring about a large revolution. However, I don't have the slightest intention revealing this to the world. It's not as if it's something that can achieved easily anyways, right? As we see someone sitting on tree looking at Davy, and Davy notices, asks who you might be. The person disappears, and Davy says even though it's been a while since I had eyes all around me, this is definitely the Queen's doing. If I were to look into it, it would only bring me trouble, so I'm leaving it be. On the contrary, it would be helpful if they thought of me as the weak and dumb prince. Due to spreading my mana distortion field, I've been able to train in peace. Also, the amount of mana that's being stored has accumulated quite a bit. However, it's about time I made that, the goddamned mana circle. Davy says priests can't use magic and mages can't use holy powers, and necromancy is a power that both of them cannot use. However, as you know, I can wield all three of these powers, all thanks to the temples, 2 crazy girls, and the 2 odd researchers. Just thinking about it makes me sick. Normal mages draw a circle on their heart in order to use their mana. Davy breathes and focuses, and says unfortunately that method cannot handle the clash between necromancy and the holy power. If I were to do that, my heart would probably be destroyed. A circle made just for me, the circle is called the artery circle. By matching the arteries all around my body, I create an intricate circle and pour mana into it. To use your entire body, including the mana in your heart, as the circle, other than stopping the clash between necromancy and the holy power. It also brings about amazing results. However, since this is as close to body modification as one can get, even a single mistake will be the death of you. That's why I didn't want to do this. The last time I did it, I was barely able to succeed because of the other 4 girls. He hesitates and says, damn it, will I succeed this time? We see the hand of one of the girls, and Davy says, right, this isn't like me. Failing can't be as bad as spending 1,000 years in that temple. I'll start with the blood. Let's give this a try, and we see a huge magic circle expanding. It gets nighttime, and Amy says it's already past dinner time. The young master is late. He's usually late, but he's never missed a meal. He told me to not bother him unless something big happened, but if something happened to him, he wouldn't be able to call for help. If something were to happen to the prince, and we hear Davy's voice saying, I thought I told you not to call me prince. As Davy says I'm back and asks Amy, did you perhaps wait for me? He sighs and says you and your resilience. It seems like I have to work harder. As he hugs Amy, she gets confused and blushes. He says, sorry, Amy, and that he is at his limits. He falls on the ground, which shocks Amy. We see Davy waking up saying, I got worried for no reason. And Amy, who slept while holding Davy's hand. Davy says, that's right, I passed out yesterday, the thing I was hesitant to do. The artery circle has been completed perfectly. The 3 powers flows in my veins, on top of this strange circle. There is another special effect. We then see Amy waking up as she looks at Davy. He says it's limitless. Just by moving a finger, I can use any simple spell, including restore. As he says good morning to Amy. 5 minutes later, Amy comes to Davy running, saying, Sir, look at this. There's even herbs in here. He says, I am just fine with what we eat right now. I'm really thankful, as he says exactly 3 months ago. Once the artery circle was completed, and our lives became steady, someone has been leaving meat and vegetables in my castle. At first, I thought it was a plan by Queen, but there's no way that she would leave perfect good every time without reason. I feel that someone is definitely helping me, but I can't tell who that might be. I thought I heard someone yesterday. As he senses a presence, he says to spread his mana through the castle to find out who it is, an easy task. Though they have been keeping their distance from Amy in order to not hinder her day-to-day life, he says someone is approaching as we see someone with a stick. Amy says we won't have a problem with food this time around either. Davy says all right, go clean it up. She says pardon, and Davy says we're expecting guests soon, as he smiles and says, who could it be? We see 3 people arrive at castle who are Queen's informant. We see them checking out Davy and his health condition. He asks them, how is it? Do you think I will get well soon? And he replies, since the prince has been bedridden for so long, it's too dangerous for me to use my holy powers on you. So you have to be thankful with what you have now, as Davy says, is that so while he thinks it's bullshit. And for a guy who didn't even use a proper healing spell to begin with, as the envoy of God and the representative priest of this nation, to throw away your responsibilities and just follow orders, what a disappointment. And inside his mind adds, you should stop sugarcoating your words. It's not that you can't heal me, but that you won't. I thought with the silver gun that was given to you by Priya, you'd be able to heal such trivial injuries right away. Contrary to your belief, my body is near the end of its recovery. He replies, Prince, you say that because you don't understand. Davy says, I don't understand. He replies, the usage and knowledge of holy power is something only given to priest. Even for a prince, you mustn't be so selfish. As the priest Boris says, that so it's true, you're so similar to the Prince Carlos. Amy gets angry and tells him you are in front of the prince. He replies, tread carefully with your words. How dare a maid, as he angrily tries to hit Amy, saying, are you trying to teach me? Amy falls down due to the slap, and Davy says, hey you. Boris replies that, oh no, prince. If I were to leave a maid who say whatever she wants, it would be also a problem for you. Though she doesn't look like much, as he holds her face and looks at her lustfully, saying, this girl has quite the smile. As Davy gets pissed off, but Boris backs off, saying, since I came all the way here, she should be able to least see me to the door, right, prince? And says the examination is over. I will see you again in 15 days. And Davy replies, see you then. Davy tells Amy to escort him, and Amy replies yes, as she looks sad, and the priest looks very smug about it, but Davy looks pissed. We see Amy and Priest at the door, and the priest says, "Remember this. You have to come by yourself at night. Remember that the life of Prince is in the palm of my hands." Amy, scared, says this is, and the priest says, "A royal maid. Why would I care? He's just a sick prince," as he looks at a scared Amy with lust-full eyes. We see a sword and stuff knocked over, and Davy saying, "I have this weird feeling that my body is becoming cold." We see him walking towards the door and saying, "How should I explain this?" We see sword marks, and he says, "Rage. No, I build up too much dignity at the temple to put it that simply." And Lady Daphne said that I'd be less than an animal if I couldn't control my anger. But my thoughts are different as he moved towards the priest with his drawn sword. The guard shouts, "Who is it?" and says in shock, "Prince." And Davy says adequate rage is the spring of life and can also be the guidepost of your goal. If laziness is the key to advancement, rage would be its driving force. As we see, he killed them both, the guards. Back to the priest, he says, "Keep in mind that Prince Davy's life is within my hands." Amy says, "You're saying that's assassination of royalty." He replies, "What's that got to do with me? He's only a halfie. The Queen would rather say that I did well. Do you think that there's anyone within this kingdom who's on Prince Davy's side? Who would dare to punish me, the hands and feet of the Queen, the sheep of the kind shepherd? Priya, isn't that right?" As we see Davy sitting behind him, and he says that's good, he gets shocked, and Davy says, "I needed an excuse too." Davy swings his sword at him, and he falls down. While in shock, he says, "Your Majesty." He asks how. Davy asks Amy what's the penalty for blasphemy against the royalty. As he points his sword at him, in shock, Priest says it can't be. "How can't I move?" Davy says, "This is why you can't be promoted from a lower class position. We never needed your dirty magic from the start." Davy says, "Amy, didn't I tell you to not make me tell twice?" She says the penalty for blasphemy against royalty, that's. Before she could complete, Davy kills the priest. He holds his neck and says the Queen won't just watch this as it happens. Additionally, the Holy Land. Davy smiles and says thanks for the warning, but I guarantee you, those who stand by you will be gone too. Linus shouts at Davy, says you must be crazy to kill none other than the disciple from the Holy Land. She says, "How could you do that if you weren't?" Davy replies, "Disciple, Borty threatened my life. I punished him according to the law. Is there something wrong with that?" She tries to hit him in anger, and Davy say, "Isn't funny, just up till I fell into a coma. The kingdom's laws weren't so brutal." All this happened, and His Majesty, the king, is still silent. But for me, the one who punished someone who blasphemed royalty to be penalized. It just doesn't make sense. When did the status of royals become something lower than low-ranked disciple? In anger, she says, "You dare to lower His Majesty and the royalty's authority. There is no evidence, no matter the reason for killing him. It's not something for you to judge with that empty brain of yours. A complaint will come from the Holy Land immediately. I knew you took after the stupidity of your mother." He replies, "Of course, I should take after my mother." She says, "You shallow being, you and your mother a shallow pair," and Davy gets pissed, saying, "Your Majesty the Queen." It is not good behavior to curse someone's parents right in front of them with an intimidating face, and the Queen gets scared. Sensing it, both her maids steps in with weapons drawn. One of the maid gets behind Davy with her weapon, and Davy mocks them, saying, "It's good to see your loyalty." He says, though it would have become more interesting if you'd done a little more, and he sighs. He sits down and says, "Oh well, too much drives a nail into a person's coffin, whether that's the Queen or anyone else." He smiles, saying, "Trying to murder someone of the same royalty is the no different." She gets shocked and says, "No way," and thinks he knew that Carlos was the culprit. He smiles and says, "That's right, of course I did. I'm not stupid enough to keep a card up my sleeve for long. It doesn't suit my tastes. I'm a bit tired, so will you please go back? I knew as soon as you slapped a patient's cheeks that you're not very considerate. And please be more ladylike in my place. As you can see, the state of this building isn't very good, and mocks her saying for someone so shabby to come to such precious place. You had taken all the people who used to work here. I want you as the person who takes care of housekeeping to make sure that this is fixed as soon as possible. He threatens her, saying, if it continues like this, quite a grotesque rumor might circulate. Though that's not a bad idea, it'll be better for you to make a decision carefully. And warns her, saying, I won't stay put while you act out like I did before. We see the queen getting angry and throwing stuff around, saying a half-blood dares to disdain her while shouting loud. Her maids looks at her and she says, keep acting out like that. Fine, if your wish is to die. There's nothing stopping me from helping you. The way you act without being able to differentiate between heaven and earth will be reason for your death. It seems the rumor is true. What rumor? The one about the first prince. There's no other way to explain his actions besides something going wrong with his head after he woke up from his coma. As Amy walks by, they say, wait, be quiet. After the priest was dealt with, and the queen was warned, the situation in the inner palace was as expected. Rumors started circulating. The first Prince Davy Roan has gone crazy, it said, as half of the people of the palace were on Queen Lina's side. My reputation took a nosedive. Your Majesty, Amy shouts, please have a look at this. More come in today. Davy says again, I don't need medicinal herbs. Amy says it's something to thank for. There must be someone who knows of your good nature. Davy replies, does my personality seems that good to you? She happily replies yes. Davy says, immediate answer, to be like that even though I killed a person right in front of her eyes. She's really an amazing person, and we see someone come to them as they say, excuse me. I greet the small son of the kingdom, as he says, ah, wait there. He is introduced as Grand Chamberlain of the royal family affiliate, Bisfuz. He says, we have brought the sinners to you as Her Majesty the Queen has ordered. These are all the people who embezzled the money from your palace's budget and ran away. Davy replies, I see there are even some faces I can recognize. Embezzlement and fleeing, Bisfuz, how is this normally penalized? He replies that it depends on your orders, but it is normally punished by beheading, including their family. They beg for forgiveness and say, please let us live. Davy replies, is that right, now that I think of it? There's been an interesting rumor circulating recently. I think it says that I am crazy for blood. Yes, something like has been going around, Bisfuz replies. Then should I act in accordance with that? They again beg, saying, please, you can't, your majesty, we beg you, please spare our lives. He says, Bisfuz. He replies, I understand. What are you all doing? Put them in the jail cells, and don't give them a sip of water. It is right for them to die for coveting the kingdom's precious money, he says to his guards, though I'm not happy completely with the fact that this was the Queen's order. I'll play along since the situation has become somewhat interesting, as Bisfuz shouts that they will be beheaded in 9 days. Bisfuz says the positions that are still empty for serving your majesty, the prince will be filled and allocated by noon. Davy replies, all right, I'll keep Amy as my personal maid, raise her pay to a high-rank maid and give her extra bonus too. He replies, I will do as you wish. And one more thing, is an audience with my father still not permitted? Bisfuz replies, I am sorry, and Davy says, is that my father's order or Queen's? He replies that he is only a messenger, and Davy says, I see how it is. He replies, your majesty, you must be patient the kingdom. Davy says, I know what you're trying to say. Patience, huh? I'll keep that in mind, Davy says as Bisfuz sighs. Bisfuse says then I'll be going, and Davy says oh right I ate the food that was sent too. Bisfuse gets surprised hearing it, and Davy says, but the food is enough, so you don't have to keep sending me more medicinal herbs. Well now, that things have changed, maybe it goes for the other things too, as Bisfuse pretends, and says I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. It seems that your kind nature has been blessed, and says anyways a special guest will be here to visit you soon, so I'll be off now. Davy says how does he knows that? Davy says that silly old man, is he trying to play dumb even though the evidence is right here? The Grand Chamberlain Bisfuse, the head of all the people who work under the king. I saw him when I was younger. I didn't know that there was someone else besides Amy who was on my side in this palace. Oh, that's right, didn't Bisfuse say that someone was coming here, as we see the door open? It's Amy, as she says, Your Majesty. Davy confused says Amy. She replies that the fourth and second princess have, but before she can complete, she is pushed aside. As someone lunges at her shouting brother, and Davy gets scared, and she crashes onto him. Brother, it's Winley. She is introduced as Winley Al Roan, Roan Kingdom's second princess, as she says I'm here with a cheerful and happy face. She says oh while sitting on top of him, and asks brother are you all right, and Davy thinks I couldn't tell who it was using control mana because Amy was with her. As someone picks her up and says you should have been more careful, you careless person, who is introduced as Barris Al Roan, Roan Kingdom's fourth prince, as he says, I wanted to see you, brother Davy. Davy says the current king of the Roan Kingdom, Cryonis Al Roan, has 3 wives Inlusing, current queen, Linus Baert, along with 2 other concubines. While the second concubine, Alice, is the perfect support of the queen, the first queen concubine, Anisha, didn't choose sides and decided to stay neutral. Becoming an outsider between the wives, Barris and Winley are her children, so we're siblings with different mothers, as Winley says sorry for causing a ruckus brother. As Winley suddenly hits her brother, and he asks, what are you doing, Winley? They both argue back and forth between each other like siblings. Davy says I heard that they were taking care of a group of robbers. But it must be true. They really don't seem like royalty, unlike Linus' children. However, he says, and they both looks at Davy to solve their argument. They're still the siblings who are close to me and listen to all that I have to say, as Davy laughs and Winley tells him to stop laughing. They say it's been 6 years, and Barris says we were sent to a remote area after you fell into a coma. Davy replies, I heard of your situation briefly. Barris and Winley were only 8 when I had fallen into the coma. What could these powerless children do at the time? Adding to that, the concubine Anisha sent her first daughter Tana to a foreign kingdom due to Queen Linus' scheming. She would have had to at least protect 2 children she has left. He tells them it's okay, I understand, and thinks though the people themselves don't seem to be able to accept. He asks, all right, have you met father? They reply, yes. We met him before we came here to see you, and Davy asks how is he. Barris replies he seemed a little tired, and Winley questions, Davy, have you not met father? And Davy says, it's like that right now, but I'll be able to meet with him one day. Barris says, brother, we saw this on the way here, but the condition of the palace. He replies there were a few bastards who embezzled money from the budget. It'll come back to how it was soon since they've all been captured. Barris gets angry hearing it, as he slams the table, and says they all did that while knowing you were still in your room. I'm going to father this instant, and Davy replies, let it be. Barris is still not convinced, but seeing Davy, as he says it's fine. I'll take care of my own work. Davy thinks I wonder if the reason it seems there's a lot of people on my side is just my imagination. Davy says rather, I didn't know Winley had such a talent in magic. I heard you were in artistic group, so I was quite surprised. Barris replies this idiot would get hurt if it wasn't for me. Winley says he's always running at me head first like a bull, and Barris gets angry saying, "What did you say?" Winley replies to receive the participation qualifications for the Continental Swordsmanship competition with such a personality. Barris says, "Stop spouting nonsense, of course I earned it with my skills," as Davy looks at them. Davy asks swordsmanship competition. Barris tells Winley, "You idiot, our plan is ruined because you..." Winley replies, "We're going to talk to him about it anyways, so it doesn't matter." Barris explains, "So it's this. It's swordsmanship competition that is held every 5 years. The competition for this year will be held in Pallisti Kingdom. Davy read it a competition that encourages harmony between continents. Is it like Olympics, he wonders? Mercenaries and royalties, there's a lot of different class attendance." Barris says, "Brother, you should take the opportunity while you can. You've basically never gone outside the kingdom, have you? So I made a request to father." Winley says, "No, I did. Brother, let's go. The Pallisti Kingdom is the city of water, so it should be beautiful. If you're worried about being too weak, I will even carry you on my back." "Yes, he's right to be a porter," Winley replies. They both again argue, and Davy says, "All right, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't reject an offer from the twins," as they get happy, and Davy shouts to stop destroying my palace. Davy thinks, "Are you really that happy? That's right, as Barris said. I've hardly been outside this palace. It wouldn't be so bad to enjoy an event in this world at least once. I can also have a little bit of fun too." As he says, "I'm looking forward to this," and Winley replies she as well. We see Miss Fuse pouring drink and saying, "Swordsmanship competition, huh? Barris is turning 14 this year. He's nearly an adult too. They should be having a conversation with each other now. Please don't worry, the young master has become more upright. His calmness and splendid perception. Even I was surprised to see how much he had grown." The king says it's enough that even you're acknowledging it, as we finally get to look at him while he says that's quite sad. We finally see Davy's mom as he is setting up her pics and says, "Good, perfect." He says, "I barely avoided the state of this place becoming more like a haunted house. Thanks to the Grand Chamberlain, Bisfu's fast work. New workers were quickly employed, and my palace became more palace-like." As Amy gets all excited seeing it, and says, "I can't believe it. This day really came, and Davy thinks that person is interesting in her own way. Did I push her too much?" Amy says, "I'm glad it's such a good thing that everything is going well." "Brother, are you ready?" Yes, Davy replies, "Is it already time?" "Amy, you packed everything right," and she replies, "Yes." As he hands Amy a bottle saying, "Take care of this for me," and says, "Then shall we go?" Continental swordsmanship competition, as much as it was an event that drew the world's attention, its influence was also huge. In addition to Barris's participation, even I was allowed to go under the pretext of being ill, even if I wasn't able to. If Barris was able to achieve something of any sort, the stupid second Prince Carlos position would definitely take a hit. For some reason, the Queen easily agreed to Barris's participation in the competition, as if she was so sure that he wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Or was she planning something? We see the king arrive, and everyone says we greet the kingdom's son, Cryness Al Roan, Roan Kingdom's current king. And the person who's supposed to be my father, it's my first time seeing him after I woke from my coma. You avoided me well this past half a year. The king says, "Raise your heads." "Are you confident?" he asks. Barris replies, "I will make sure to do well to represent our kingdom through my achievements." He puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "Come back safe," and notices Davy and Amy. And Davy looks back and stares at him with disinterest. And the king leaves and says to Davy, "It's good to see that you're healthy." Winley looks at Davy and says brother, and Davy thinks that he isn't going to waste his emotion on him now. We then see the announcer says listen, the fourth Prince Barris's participation in the continental swordsmanship is of great importance. For this purpose we will get rid of the curfew from today onwards and start he festival. Davy says there's no trace of his heroic and confident old self. He's changed so much, as if an old lion who's completely tired of everything. We then see Davy in carriage and looking out through the window. Isn't it boring? Barris asks, and Winry says even if it seems like it, we have hired elite guards, so not even wild animals will be able to come close to us. Is there something you're uncomfortable with? Winry adds. Davy replies, I'm fine, don't sweat it. I'm more worried that the journey seems more tedious since we're going via carriage because of me, and they both replies not at all. Winry says you prepared this wine for us, so there's no time to be worrying, and Barris says be more responsible with your drinking. It's my first time having such a fragrant wine. Where did you find such high-grade wine? Winry asks. Davies says it's something my mother left here, so I don't know. Barris says, can we really drink something so precious? And Davy replies, why leave something meant to be consumed? Instead, we should drink it on such a day like this. Barris says you changed a lot, brother. Davy asks, really? And Winry says yes. Barris says you used to be protective over anything. Your mother had left as Davy blushes hearing it, and thinks these small bastards have good memory. As they all cheer, saying, tasty wine is not something to be shelved, but to be consumed. Cheers. I like how you think they say. As it gets night time, and they say we will depart tomorrow morning, and they light fire. Barris says it seems that it'll take another day to get to the Palisty Kingdom. It'll be your first time camping. Is there anything bothering you? He asks Davy, and he replies it's fine. Davy asks how's Winley, and Barris says I somehow got her to go elsewhere. He says she drank too much. Davy says I'm sorry. Barris says brother, do you remember? You used to say that you wanted to try camping out like this. And says though we tried to keep the parade as short as possible since we thought it'd be burdensome for you. And Davy replies he knows that this trip that could have easily been over with by riding horses is slow like this due to me being a patient. Davy thinks that if there are things that change, then are there also things that stay the same? He says he likes it a lot here, and Barris leaves. Amy says, Your Majesty, will you also take some rest now? Davy replies that the moon is prettier than usual today, and Amy, confused, asks pardon. We see Davy using a branch as he says it'd be a perfect time to make a comeback, don't you think? The red one is Cyrus, and the blue one is Crias. They also call them Crias, who makes the beginning shine, and Crias, that illuminates the end, as Davy says you know quite well. He replies this is common sense. A snotty kid would be smarter than you. I should have conversations like this with a woman. The actual person comes up saying, hey, what are you muttering all alone? And he gets confused and asks, why are you coming from there? They wonder, was it a ghost? And Davy replies it was him using phantom magic medium. Davy says there were 5 guards that the twins hired, and 4 of them are elite sword experts, so there are enough people. That is, as long as nothing big happens. That's right, things like being attacked by assassins. As he sees them, and says maybe there's around 20. They were probably planning on attacking when everyone fell asleep. They even hid their bloodthirst, so as assassinators, they're pretty good. It's obviously that woman's deed. A chance for her to get rid of me, including Barris and Winley too. There's no way that she would let a chance like this go. He jumps from the tree and says I'm not exactly happy with having to expose my strength already and receiving suspicions. But when I think about it, it doesn't really matter. As he starts to imbue mana onto the branch, and says people who see me like this won't live anyways as he cuts down all of them as the length of the branch increases. He lands and says if you don't have tea, use your gums was it. The Pegasus Doc Go Jun, who taught me swordsmanship, told me this. Whatever you hold in your hands can become a weapon. Do not forget there is no rule to fighting. Weapons are an extension of your body. Depending on how you think, a piece of cloth can become an excellent, unique sword. He smirks and says what? They were only capable of this much. They come nowhere near Hermesa, who taught me the hand of death. Boring bastards, he says I'm asking this just to confirm. But did Queen Linus send you here which makes the assassin scared? And Davy says this is exactly like playing Bull Rush. He again moves towards them saying leave it if you don't want to answer and appears behind them, and says nothing will change even if you do. What did that woman even try to achieve from this? 3 royalties, the whole kingdom would be shaken. Even Queen Linus would have a hard time because of it. Is there's reason as to why she's so confident? As Davy slaughters all of them and says to the remaining that you still haven't run away, or are you still unaware of what's happening? He tells them to go tell her that I'll destroy everything she has even if she doesn't nag me. As they all run away and Davy smiles sadistically, he catches up to them and says you're running away because I told you to. It was a fake, you fucking idiots. He then uses random movement, pistol explosion, and kills all of them. As they lay on the ground, Davy says how can you fall for that idiot? The fundamental of being an assassin is patience. If there's no one else watching, it's an assassination. This is a famous saying, so remember it. If there's no one else watching, it's an assassination. This is a famous saying, so remember it. He says but one is running, while others are fighting. Davy easily kills them all as well, and creates a lightning trail in his path. He says you guys aren't even worth this branch as he points his finger at the assassin who is running away and locks onto him, saying I'd already prepared this when I saw you guys. As long as you don't reach other side of continent, you can't escape it. He snaps his finger and uses an ability called Confuse Lower Resist Soul Explosion. He explains a magic technique that immediately kills souls that don't have a shape, scent, or color. It's a bit of a brutal way to do this, but everyone who taught me told me to end things properly. Don't be merciful to those who try to kill you, they said, a proper end. As Davy leaves, he says it's a perfect assassination. That's right, an assassination. Whatever happens as long as no one find out, this is an perfect assassination. We see the queen asking how did it go, and the maid replies all the candles that were connected to my students' lives have been turned off, and queen says they've been wiped out, and she replies yes. She asks what about those bastards, and the maid replies that they would have just arrived in the Palisti kingdom. The queen slaps the maid and says just how are you taking care of things? It was just 3 children and 5 knights. But you're telling me that 20 people went and all died. The Black Moon Guild was only capable of this, huh? She replies we are still investigating what happened, but it seems that Prince Davy was a helper. Queen says who would help those damn halfies, as she bites her finger in anger. She orders the maid to find out who that helper is, and I'll show them what happens if they get in the way of me, Linus. The maid replies I'll do what you said, and Queen replies yes, do not forget. The reason I'm working with and supporting you is not because I want to see failure. If you do not succeed this time, our contract will end there. And I will use the power of the Bariat family, even this country's power to bury the Black Moon Guild, and the maid replies I will keep that in mind. It's morning and Winley calls out brother and tells him to look over there. That is the Palisti kingdom. As Winley and Barris both again argue and Davy looks out the window saying, we're finally here. Davy explains the kingdom of water, Palisti. It's a small city-state that's the size of Singapore on Earth. But it's built on historic ruins, and is one of the most beautiful places on this continent, as Davy looks at the architecture of the city. Barris says, judging by your expression, it seems that you're quite happy, and Davy replies, yes. And this is where the Continental Swordsmanship competition will be held. He explains this stadium is normally used as a fighting ground. They're quite popular with having fighters and even monsters fight for their life here. That's completely barbarous. Davy asks anyhow, how is the competition? Have you found out how many people are participating? Barris says it seems that there are 8 countries participating this time around, starting with the host country Fallon, the Felip Kingdom, Scorden Kingdom, etc. The competition is going to be held with the representatives from each kingdom as the main focus. Davy sighs and says so in the end it's a battle of pride between countries. Davy says it's a bit boring how only those who are younger than 20 are participating, and Barris replies that's because it's a competition for the younger generation. They say it seems like it's not yet time for a competition to find talented people. Winley says, and for your information, the Roan Kingdom's representative is this idiot here, and he says, are you here to cheer for me or just annoy me? Davy looks at them as they both argue again. Davy thinks Barris's skills are of a mid-level expert, the rank, just under that of a master swordsman. This is amazing, considering his age. It's something to look forward to. Winley says now that I think about it, the representative for the Fallon Kingdom is the famous Princess of the Sword, and Davy asks Princess of Sword. She gets surprised and says, my goodness, you don't know. There's no one in the Roan Kingdom who doesn't know that name. Davy thinks I'm normally quite confident of my memory. It seems someone new appeared while I was in a coma. Elena de Fallon, the Fallon Kingdom's only princess with 9 princes, and the Crown Prince's favorite person. Barris says of course her fame comes from being the only princess of a great kingdom, the Fallon Kingdom, but that's not all there is to it. The reason she is famous is because she's the owner of the God Sword, and Davy says God Sword. Winley explains yes. It's known as the sword god's most favorite sword, God Sword Calderas. It's one of the masterpieces made in 1,000 days and nights. Davy says God Sword Calderas. It's been a while since I've heard that name. That's because my first teacher at the temple was the sword god, Hares. Though he was lazy, he had really good skills. I heard the name of the sword he used way too much, to the point that my ears bled. Did they say it was the sword that killed the demon lord, in contrast with the Pegasus dog Go Jun at the demonic academy? As a person from here, it was a normal for him to leave a mark somewhere. As a woman passes by him, as Davy thinks, but it still feels kind of strange. The girl looks back at him, and someone asks her, Miss, what is it? She touches her necklace and says, no, it's nothing. Winley explains it is said that the god sword Calderas has never been damaged in any way before. I heard that it has an ego absorbed into it, so it manifests magic by itself. Barris says an ego is a sword spirit that has been said to come from the maker's soul and the swordsman's love for the sword. It's called a god sword for no reason. Winley replies the owner that the sword chose after hundreds of years was Princess Elena, and Davy asks really. Barris says, and there's one more reason that Princess Elena is so famous, and he replies there's more. He says yes, that is, the fact that she is one of the 5 blossoming beauties of the continent. That's the reason why, which excites Davy as he says, oh, as Barris says who cares about her being the owner of Calderas, that's the most appealing thing about her. Now, we see Davy all dressed up as he asks Amy, don't you have anything more plain? And she replies this is quite simple already. Amy says your dignity represent the Roan kingdoms, even if you don't really like it, and Davy thinks I'm only a spectator. She says royalties are very simple-natured. The Continental Swordsmanship competition is a place where various countries gather. Would a place like this only be for watching the representatives of each country battle against each other? Of course not, that won't be the case. Now we see at the Eve Festival, both Winley and Barris are all dressed up. Davy tells Winley, "You're pretty. I thought you were a fairy." And she replies, "You're really cool too." Brother and Barris tells Davy to not compliment her too much. As Winley hits Barris on his foot, she leaves with Davy saying, "Prince, will you accept the honor of being my escort today?" And Davy says, "It seems like our positions have changed." Barris shouts, "Wait for me," and we see someone grabbing a girl's hand, saying it is an honor to be able to serve you. He asks, "Your Majesty," and she replies, "It's a little noisy." The guy says, "Please be gracious. This is a gathering for the younger generation to build new friendships." She asks to build friendships, huh? And he says, "I heard that you visited the village during the day. How was it? Did you see that stadium that way?" She says it wasn't so bad for a place that's so barbarous. We arrive at Continental Swordsmanship Competition Banquet and see a bunch of people greeting each other. Davy says, "So, are these the participants of the Continental Swordsmanship Competition? I wonder. They all look so young since it's an age-restricted competition. Though there are older people who are accompanying the participants like Winley and I, there are still quite a few young ones. And out of all these people, the most popular person is." And we see someone saying, "It is nice to meet you, Prince Barris." And we see a bunch of girls introducing themselves to Barris, and Davy notices it's Barris. He says if you think about his abilities, it's obvious. Anyways, this banquet is a great opportunity to make relations and to find out about your opponents. Winley is also getting a bit of attention. It's pretty bustling, as Barris looks towards Davy for help. And Davy thinks now, "How should I help this fletching from this situation?" He puts his glass down and goes to Winley, and while ignoring Barris completely. As we see Barris stuck, and Davy saying, "You should enjoy your youth, young one." Winley says to see the day that I would dance with you, and Davy replies, "You're telling me. I didn't know you danced so well." Winley replies, "Despite how it looks, I just entered the social hierarchy," and Davy replies, "Is that so?" She asks Davy, "Are you a bit upset? If it wasn't for your situation, you would also be able to enter the competition. You also have the talent for swordsmanship." Davy replies, "Aren't you just putting me on a pedestal? Even so, I wouldn't have been able to reach an expert by 14. If you think about it, talent is nothing but an illusion. If you don't work at it, just becomes nothing." As inside, he thinks I did had 1,000 years of practice, so. Also, these sort of things don't really matter to me anymore. Winley replies, "A dream is all about living your life leisurely," and Davy says, "You sound like a grandpa." Winley laughs at it, and we hear someone say, "I see we meet in a place like this," to Winley. He calls her out Princess Winley, as she takes notice of him as well. He says, "I was looking forward to our meeting," to which Davy thinks, who is this slimy bastard? He wonders if he knows Winley, as Winley, looking at him, gets irritated. He hits Davy and holds Winley's hand, saying, "Would you be willing to give me the honor of having a chat?" She removes his hand and says, "Excuse me, Prince Valeshan. I'm currently in the middle of a conversation with my brother." Valeshan gets irritated and says, "Oh, I apologize for my manners. I am Balit's kingdom's 7th prince, Valeshan du Balitz." And Davy also introduces himself, albeit coldly. Valeshan says, "Is that it?" and Davy replies, "So what?" Valeshan asks, "So what brings you to this place, Prince Davy?" And he replies, "I came to see my sibling participate." Davy thinks, "So you're telling me you did that even though you knew I was a prince, huh?" Valeshan says, "I see. I hope you have a pleasant stay." Valeshan gets on his knees and says, "Princess Winley, I would like to win this competition in your honor, so please watch closely. Winley replies, don't you think that you're being rude to all the participants? And he replies, it will not be rude once I turn it into the reality. Winley says my twin brother is participating in this competition. To say that to me only shows that you are looking down on him. As she clings to Davy and says, let's go, brother, and Davy gets impressed and says, seems like my Winley can take care of herself now. Davy gives him a side eye and says, however, that guy doesn't seem like he'll just let it end here. He gets angry and shouts at her, saying, are you looking down on me, Princess Winley? Davy, looking at him, says, if it's this much, I've been patient enough. Davy uses his foot to make him slip and grabs his hand, saying, oh no, my hand slipped. You shouldn't put your hands on my precious sister. Consider yourself lucky since I didn't break any bones. Can't ruin the competition just because of you. He gets pissed as someone says, seems like the stupid apprentice personality has become rotten. Getting angry, he throws his glove right on Davy. Davy notices the glove and Valetian challenges Davy to a duel. Winley gets angry as well and says, that's enough, Prince Valetian, and he shouts at her, saying, stay out of this, princess. I must do this for my honor as a knight. But Elena steps in, saying, you should know how much a ruckus you're causing if you're looking to reclaim your honor. As he gets scared after noticing her, and she says, I've been observing the situation. Let me ask you properly, Prince Valetian. Do you think you have the right to reclaim your honor? As seeing her shocks Davy, as he calls her Harris. The sword god Harris, an ancient hero who founded the Falan Empire, which became one of the 3 great powers of this continent. It is said that he was the original owner of the holy sword calderas, and the founder of the now lost claymore swordsmanship technique. Those who perfected their swordsmanship could supposedly cause a tsunami with a single swing of their blade. This kind of motive for that lazy old man is way too grandiose. Noticing her, Davy starts to think of Harris, as she also looks back at him. Davy in shock says it worked, as he says that all of their townsmen wag like crazy about her. He stares at her and thinks but for Elena de Falan, the owner of the holy sword, to resemble Harris this much. He thinks Harris was quite handsome, but he was definitely a male. But for Harris to now be a woman and have this much status. As Elena suddenly gets close to him and asks him, what were you saying just now? She keeps staring, and Davy makes excuse, saying, well, excuse me, I was mistaken. She still looks at him with suspicion and says, just forget it. Barris comes and asks brother what happened, as Davy looks at her again and says, Elena da Falan, Elena says, Prince Valetian, I will ask you again. By being rude to a lady with a partner, you have disrespected everyone here. Davy thinks the identity of the Emperor's forbidden treasure is really unbelievable. She continues asking, are you really worthy of your honor? And Davy thinks not just compared to that arrogant Valetian, but considering the other nobles as well. She is as charismatic as she is famous. She tells Valetian, if you truly consider yourself a knight with a code of honor, then apologize to these 2 guests. Hearing it makes him more angry, and Davy thinks, well, regardless of the intentions he might have had, someone that prideful won't apologize so easily. But then Davy smiles and says, look at this, as he tells Valetian that he accepts the duel. Winley says, brother, what are you talking about? And Davy says, you won't run from me. Elena says this is a meaningless fight. There is no need to do this, and Davy tells her that is for me to decide, my queen. So, Valetian, you said you want a duel, right? And he replies, that's right. And Davy picks up his glove and says, I accept. Davy says a wooden sword, it's been quite a while, and Barris tells Davy, brother, even if you say you've gotten better, your opponent is a swordsmanship competitor. Winley gets worried about him, and Davy pats her and says, don't get so worked up. Valetian tells Davy, you swing your sword like an amateur, Don't trouble your siblings and just give in. Valeshan says if you kneel before me and admit defeat, I'll let you off. As Boris gets angry and says, "Look here, Prince Valeshan," but Davy calms him down saying it's fine. A demonstration speaks for itself, don't you think so? Valeshan says very well, it won't happen of course, but if I lose I'll kneel down and admit defeat instead. Davy mocks him saying right, just don't take that back later, as they both stand face to face. Davy thinks all right, how should I go about this? Ultimately, this is the body of a weak prince, who's been out of a hospital bed for less than a year. I have no intention of pushing my limits in this childish fight. As Davy stands all casually and smiling, and Valeshan asks, "Are you scared?" And here I was generously waiting for you to make the first strike. It's quite shameful of a prince to not take an opportunity presented to them. But you already know that you're going to be crushed. Don't delay the inevitable and come forward. Davy thinks a very good idea just struck me. As Davy says, then I won't hold back. Davy launches himself with extreme speed, and suddenly appears in front of Valeshan, who gets shocked. Davy swings his sword downwards, missing Valeshan, but he let go of his sword. Valeshan says how stupid, and Davy thinks I thought I was fast enough, and he suddenly strikes Valeshan with his hands instead. Davy sarcastically says, "Oh no, my hands," as his swords flings into air. Valeshan falls on the ground with that one strike, as Davy says, "What's this? Did you perhaps get hit by that? If that's the case, why did you let me strike first?" As Valeshan gets pissed saying, "You brat." People watching comments, "Oh, how embarrassing. The difference in their skills is a little, how unsightly." Valeshan gets more pissed hearing that, and tells Davy that he will kill him. Davy replies with sword skills that crude. "You'll never be able to take down my swordsmanship." We see their swords clashing and Valeshan getting flustered and repeatedly saying shit. He says his posture is crap, and he doesn't even know how to control his power properly, and that there's no way that he would lose to him. But his eyes tells a different story as he says, "But why is this happening?" We see everyone watching them both fighting, and Valeshan is on the ground. Davy makes fun of him saying, "Oh no, you got hit again," as Valeshan says, "You bastard." Everyone comments, "How many times is it now? Even if he was off guard, to be hit 3 times is this the Valeshan? I thought this was supposed to be entrance of an expert. Maybe he's not all that." But Valeshan gets pissed as he slams his fist on the ground and says, "Shut up. Don't yabber about things you know nothing about." He is still on the ground, as Davy says, "So what do you know?" and wonders if he is blinded by rage at this point. Davy says, "This is exactly why I learned this swordsmanship, and its official name is Swordsmanship of a Drunkard. As the name suggests, it's a style in which the sword is wielded as if the user was drunk. It's the invention of the greatest drunkard of the Hall of Heroes, Dog Go Jun, and hares who thought it was interesting to create the most evil and maverick-like swordsmanship style. Doc says, "Damn, I made this, but it is really an evil style. Really, if it's not someone who really needs to be buried under society, then don't use this. Or you're inhumane and don't have any conscience, as Davy thinks care about your own conscience." Davy explains it was the swordsmanship style that even the 2 creators treated as taboo. I wonder why, because it creates a heavy blow and is sharp, or is it because it's too strong? As we see both of them clashing, and Davy parrying his attack with ease. And Davy says no, it's because of how embedded the style was with manipulating and deceiving the opponent. It's a style that doesn't have the goal of protecting or even killing someone, but just to completely embarrass the opponent in front of everyone. The style suits its title perfectly. It aims for the opponent's opening by avoiding an attack and performing a fatal blow. Honestly, it's really effective. It's just that the swordsmanship style really riles up the other person. And the more people who are watching, the more effective it is, just like now. Davy laughs and says I can't tell whether I'm lucky or the opponent is just powerless. Hey, that sounded really bad. You okay? Davy thinks this is fun. No matter how I think about it, I'm more suited to this style than proper swordsmanship. In the way that it seeks some fun is what I am saying. Valeshin gets pissed and reaches a breaking point, and his sword starts to glow blue. As he shouts at Davy that he will kill him, and Baris shouts sword spirit, Valeshin, are you crazy? Valeshin gives off an evil smile and says this is non-murderous training and that it's too late to regret it now. Davy still casual thinks if any more coincidence occur, it'll become suspicious. Moreover, I can feel a cold gaze on me since earlier. Davy steps forward and gets close to him, and Valeshin says, "Caught you." As he is about to strike right on Davy's face, suddenly something happens. Davy dodges and Valeshin says, "Where is he?" Davy smiles as he is right below him. Valeshin says, "Stupid bastard," as Davy uses his foot to knock him over. Valeshin falls, saying this good for nothing, and Winley and Baris shouts, "Brother." Davy strikes the sword right near his face and says, "Oh, my back." Smiling and saying, "We really fell over," and starts laughing as he asks Valeshin, "Why are you down there?" As Davy looks over and says, "So it seems like I have won."